The proportion of Americans who read books for pleasure is now at its lowest level ever recorded. Some 57% of Americans now do not read a single book in a typical year. The average American spends 17 minutes a day reading and 5.4 hours on their phone. Now, as a lover and student of literature, I've been wondering for a while, what do these plummeting reading numbers tell us? That people don't like reading anymore? I don't think that's the case, actually. I think it has just gotten much, much harder. But why? I found answers to these questions in this book, which is, by the way, probably the most important book that I've read in all of 2025, Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. The main argument for the decline of reading that Hari brings forth in this book is this one. He says that the way our media landscape develops makes it harder and harder to focus on books. So it's not just in your head that you feel like by the time a sentence ends, you don't know how it has begun anymore. And the strange thing is, it's not even that people have really stopped reading, we've just stopped reading books. Between 2008 and 2016, Hari writes in this book, the market for novels fell by 40%. So we do still read, but nowadays we read from screens, which is very different and has a very different effect on our brain. Here's a quote from page 77. Reading books trains us to read in a particular way, in a linear fashion, focused on one thing for a sustained period. Reading from screens, she has discovered, trains us to read in a different way, in a manic skip and jump from one thing to another. So the way we read from screens, the constant pushing for the key facts, as Hari calls it, just doesn't work with books. If you have had the pleasure of reading a long piece of classic literature, something like The Magic Mountain, you know that by the time you reach the end of the book, what you're taking away are not bite-sized bits of information that you can implement in your life tomorrow. What you take away is something deeper, a feeling, a change in attitude maybe, an understanding of the people around you. Things that are, in any case, very hard to measure and impossible to turn into monetary profit. And it's not that there are no measurable results in reading. Actually, the results are quite profound. Hari himself quotes a study by Raymond Marr from the University of Toronto that has found out that, quote, the more novels you read, the better you were at reading other people's emotions. It was a huge effect. This wasn't just a sign that you were better educated, because reading non-fiction books, by contrast, had no effect on your empathy. I asked Raymond why. Reading, he told me, creates a unique form of consciousness. While you're reading, you're directing attention outwards, towards the word on the page, and at the same time, enormous amounts of attention is going inwards as we imagine and mentally simulate. And another study done on children has found that the more a child is read storybooks, something their parents, more than the child, choose, the better they are at reading other people's emotions. So the effects are actually measurable. It's just that we don't value empathy in the world we live in today as much as we value status, economic growth, quick facts, and just overall consumerism. And this is reflected in the way popular media is shaped. So to get back to the main point, Hari says that the way the medium of the book functions is fundamentally different from the way television or social media functions. Right? A medium is nothing else than a way of transporting information, so you can deliver the same message through a TV show or through social media or through a book. But the way this message is delivered is very different. So on page 79, Hari asks himself what the message in the medium of Twitter is, for example. Quote, what is that message? First, that you shouldn't focus on any one thing for long. The world can and should be understood in short, simple statements of 280 characters. Second, the world should be interpreted and confidently understood very quickly. Third, what matters most is whether people immediately agree with and applaud your short, simple, speedy statements. Later in the book, Hari says that I realized one of the key reasons why social media makes me feel so out of joint with the world and with myself. I think all these ideas, the messages implicit in these mediums, are wrong. And I felt that in my heart. I don't agree with these messages either. But the thing is, by using those forms of media, we agree to the message that is interwoven in them, whether we like it or not. So in comparison to the way we consume information with social media, Hari writes about books on page 81 the following. What, I wondered, is the message buried in the medium of the printed book? Before the words convey their specific meaning, the medium of the book tells us several things. Firstly, life is complex. And if you want to understand it, you have to set aside a fair bit of time to think deeply about it. You need to slow down. Secondly, there is a value leaving behind your other concern and narrowing down your attention to one thing, sentence after sentence, page after page. Thirdly, it is worth thinking deeply about how other people live and how their minds work. They have complex inner lives, just like you. And to conclude his thoughts on books, he writes on page 85, we internalize the texture of the voices we're exposed to. When you expose yourself to complex stories about the inner lives of other people over long periods of time, that will repattern your consciousness. You too will become more perceptive, open, and empathetic. If by contrast you expose yourself for hours a day to the disconnected fragments of shrieking and fury that dominate social media, your thoughts will start to be shaped like that. Your internal voices will become cruder, louder, less able to hear more tender and gentle thoughts. So what I really like about this book is that Hari makes it very clear that this attention problem goes way beyond what is under our individual control. The way we're marketed to in late-stage capitalism just exploits every weakness of the human mind, degrading our attention spans and our morale, our happiness, our financial stability, and even our hope for the future. And this connects to a concept he discusses called cruel optimism, the idea that we face deep structural problems rooted in our culture, but we're constantly offered upbeat and individualistic solutions that don't address the real issue at all. It's not just read more or just be more disciplined. It's that the system itself is designed to pull your attention away from the kind of deep focus that reading requires. And the people with the least resources are the ones that are getting exploited the most. Hari shares in this book that we touch our phones 2,600 times a day. 2,600 times. That's not personal failing. That's the result of billions of dollars of design work aimed at capturing your attention for as long as possible. And this leads to, I think, the most important question of our time that Hari asks himself in this book, and I also ask myself over and over again. What happens when the deepest kind of thinking, slow thinking, reflective thinking, the kind of thinking books make possible, becomes available to fewer and fewer people? So I'll leave you with that. I do hope that you check out the book. I have really enjoyed it, and it has had quite profound effects on my reading life this year and the way I use technology now. So I hope you give this book a try if you're interested in this topic, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye bye.